Welcome in, everyone, to Beyond the Beat with 32 Beat Writers. My name is Zach Hyduk, and today, as you can see, it is just me. Our friend Matt is down on some tropical island sipping some pineapple or coconut-flavored drink of some kind. He's got the week off this week, at least as much as we could give it to him over here. And you just get me today. So we're going to keep it a little bit short and sweet. We're going to go through a couple of bits from the beat just to give you some information heading into the week here before your fantasy matchups on Sunday. So we're not going to hit every bit of news. If you want a large, comprehensive list of shows that you can listen to earlier on in the week, especially, make sure to check out the PlayerProfiler feed of podcasts where you can find us now located as well. Happy to have you in here. We are live today, so if you have any questions, please do feel free to put them in the comment section. Thank you to the Hairy Snowman, who has already got us started here. Yes, indeed. Welcome to the party. So if you got anything else, please put it down in the chat. All right, let's just go ahead and get started here. We'll start off with our main segment, trying a new sound effect until we find what we like here. We got some bits from the beat. You do. So let's go ahead and start with the most obvious thing here that y'all might be wondering about, and that is Patriots quarterback Drake Maye is starting now, the rookie third overall pick. Obviously, this was reported widely in the national media as well, but according to Evan Lazar, I read an article that he posted just today. You should go check that out at patriots.com. By the way, Evan, friend of the show, very, very good at what he does. He wrote about kind of what we can expect from that offense with him involved, and Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator there. I'll just say this. I've talked at length about the Patriots, and all of you know that I'm a fan, and so I do try to not talk about them too much, but I probably do anyways, so bear with me. But, it's a big deal. He's starting. The line, as we know, not great, but there were some signs of hope. Darian Lowe on the tackle side of things was very good last week, and he came back from injury. So there's some glimmers of hope. I think they were still giving up like a 42 or 47% pressure rate, which is not great. But as we know, Drake Maye is a lot more mobile than Jacoby Brissett, who was there previously, or still there, but, is no longer starting. With that being said, I think we're going to see a lot more RPOs, and that's kind of what Evan was saying, or options just in general. And this is kind of what he had to say. Evan Lazar of Patriots.com again informed that in his most recent article, Maye's mobility will likely factor into the play calling on designed option plays. Personally, I'd expect that to be like RPOs and a little bit with the run action. So in my opinion, I think that the wide receivers are going to have a bit more of a chance to be productive. It's hard for it to be any worse of an opportunity. I don't know that Jacoby Myers had thrown for over 200 yards, rarely even over 150, I think. And that's just not enough, obviously. And so if I'm looking at things, people have rights to be excited about Jalen Polk, but I think this is a Demario Douglas type of situation. Now, they are going up against Houston. That pass rush is going to be pretty bad. If you're using RPOs, you're looking at short, quick things, maybe some screens, bubbles, RPO slants, things of that variety. With Stevenson out, I don't know how that affects that with, Antonio Gibson now going to be in the backfield. That being said, I am kind of thinking Demario Douglas might be the guy who gets, I don't want to say hyper targeted, but a little bit of the focus as the individual who's going to get, as people say, peppered with targets. So, all right, let's move on here. Yes, to again, the Harry Snowman. Wow, you are chatting up down here. Never know what a live arm can do for pressure rates. That's true. I think a lot of it, though, also has to do with timing. If a lot of those pressures did happen in under 2.5 seconds, which is kind of the standard that you're looking for protection in the pocket before you can kind of get a pass off, get some plays to open up downfield. So I agree with you. If he can get the ball downfield a little bit, maybe that backs off. And give some of those underneath routes a little bit more room to open up a little bit more quickly. And if they can get the run game going, which they do have, maybe that takes some pressure off the pass rush as well there. Better career in 5 years, May or Rattler? Well, Rattler went in the 4th round, and we will see him this week. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But Rattler went in the 4th round for a reason, and May was 3rd overall pick. So if I'm making a bet, I'm going to make a bet on what the NFL made a bet on and go with the 3rd overall pick there. Personally, Will in Gulfport. Let's continue, move on. We'll address Adrian, we'll address your comment here in a little bit, but let's move on to Pittsburgh. George Pickens snap counts last week were a season low 59% of snaps. You probably saw this if you follow our timeline. Again, follow us at 32 Beat Writers on Twitter or X. Again, 59% of snaps. He did still receive, however, 7 targets, only catching 3. Not gonna lie, that game was like incredibly late, and I did not stay up for it. I'm on the East Coast, and that ended at like 1 or 2. I don't remember how late that was, but that weather delay, I was like, with the baby, no, sorry. So I don't know which of those were not entirely, ideal throws, but I think that even with a reduction in snap counts, we're going to probably be okay from a opportunity standpoint. When asked, Nick Fairbaugh of Penn Live was talking to George Pickens and asked if there's a way that he can, get back up to the snap counts that he had before. And Pickens said, quote, "It's up to Art," referring, of course, to Arthur Smith, and that it can change week to week. Pickens said, quote, "If Art wants to do a certain type of play or certain types of game plans, it's going to be different." In response to another question, I think Pickens just answered, "Yeah." So, I think things are interesting there. Not entirely sure what's going on, but it did make me wonder, Pittsburgh has been known as a place where they can kind of keep a lid on the drama there. You think of Antonio Brown and all of that situation. People didn't know he was kind of crazy until he left the Steelers there. But with the Deontay Johnson stuff, the Juju stuff, and now the Pickens stuff, not to mention, wow, the wide receiver that I can't think of who went to Chicago and Buffalo, Chase Claypool. It actually kind of makes me wonder if like our perception of Pittsburgh and their wide receiver guruship and ability to control drama there is really as good as we kind of thought it was. But anyways, the Steelers play the Raiders this week. Obviously, you don't love to see a reduction in snaps, and if it goes down again this week, of course, that's a major concern. But unless they straight up bench the guy, it's just hard to see how it doesn't lead the team in targets. Obviously, we've seen a little bit more from Calvin Austin, which is great. But at the end of the day, he's pretty much the best guy that they have going for him, and so that's what I'd expect, right? That being said, he hasn't performed higher than wide receiver 25 and a half PPR at least this year. So, in my opinion, it's kind of a shot at a wide receiver 2, but we'll have to see, what actually ends up happening there this week against the Raiders. According to reporting from Nick Underhill and many others, of course, Spencer Rattler is starting for the Saints this week. We will have to see how Rattler is able to perform. I did get a chance to see him when I was live at the Senior Bowl, and while it's apparent like why he was touted very, very highly. If you look at him coming out of high school, of course, as everybody knows, 5-star recruit. I think he was number 1 in the class in a lot of ways. He's just not as tall or as fast as you would like. And I'm not going to claim to be some sort of draft guru here. I do what I can to know and educate myself. We'll have to just really see how this plays out on Sunday. I do think they're making the right move going to him instead of Hainer. But with Derek Carr out for, I believe it's going to be, at least a couple weeks here. It's just not something that I know exactly how it's going to play out. I will say Alvin Kamara is probably the safest play here. You probably heard that from some other accounts as well throughout the week, but I'd expect him to take the same dump offs that he always does. It's going to be a pretty big advantage for Rattler to kind of have that outlet there, but I also wouldn't be too scared of starting Chris Olave either. Now, he hasn't exactly performed as everybody would have loved, but Rattler does kind of have a way of just ripping balls regardless of the potential consequences. And he was quoted as saying, and we tweeted this, and you can find the video on our feed as well, that quote when talking about Olave, The dude's just different. I make it a key point when he's in, get him the ball. It's that simple. So I don't see any reason why we don't believe or expect that will be the case. So I think he's probably going to hyper target, if again we can use that word. I don't know how much they'll actually try to pass the ball here this week, but I would say that Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave still may not be the worst starts if you're kind of in a pinch, particularly with Olave, despite the fact he has not exactly, done what you had hoped. I'm just going to check the comments here real quick, and we'll continue on. Actually, let's take a break here real quick and check out a word from our sponsor.
Oh, the NFL season is underway, and if you drafted on Fast Draft this summer, the Origins All-Rookie game, the Flex 4 game, check the live scoring, see where you are in the standings. You might be in line for a big payday. And no matter where you are in the world, you should have the Fast Draft app, because there's a custom Dynasty mock tool that's free to everybody with super sharp ADPs, and we're rolling out DFS tournaments throughout the year, and the 2025 tournaments will go live before any of us realize, oh my God, the 2025 season is upon us. Download Fast Draft, register, and you will be alerted as soon as these new contests are unleashed. Check it out on fastdraft.app.
All right, thank you to our Player Profiler friends over there at playerprofiler.com. High grade here. Juwan Johnson is the Saints guy you want. He says, I understand kind of why you say that. Not 100% sure. I don't know. It's tight end is just tough anyway, so I'm not going to tell you not to make that play. But last week he did have a season high 5 targets, but I don't know if that's going to get it done with Rattler or not. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think Olave is just going to demand more targets than the tight end position. So that's my personal opinion. Let's move on really quickly. Get my last little bit here, and then we'll move into some injury news with Dr. Tom Christ of Fantasy Injury Team. Matt Schneidman of The Athletic shared some video of Romeo Doubs, wide receiver for the Packers, playing in practice this week. Additionally, we just got news that Luke Musgrave, tight end, is going to be placed on injured reserve. Now, that should open up some opportunities in the offense, even though I think it seems like Christian Watson's going to play. We can get some updates on that here in a few minutes. But they play Arizona this week, and when Jordan Love has been in the game, Romeo Doubs has received 7 targets 1 week and 8 in week 1, and then 8 targets in last week. No, not last week, the week prior when Jordan Love was in the game. So I'd probably be starting him. Like if I had a flex play that I needed, understand that he hasn't really hit that ceiling. I think 50 yards or so is his highest total on the season. But that being said, 7 and 8 targets per game. I'm going to take that every time I can get it with Jordan Love. And while you're probably going to have the 3 main wide receivers being Reed, Doubs, and then of course Watson. I know everybody was super excited about Wicks, and it just didn't end up working out for him this last week. I think that Doubs is not a bad play, and so with him being back at practice, it seems like all the quotes coming out from the Packers when you get interviews with the players and all of that are that they all just kind of want to move on and go from there. And for whatever reason, I can't tell you exactly what was going on because I'm not Romeo Doubs, but I wouldn't be too worried about it going forward, and I kind of like where that's going. All right, let's get some injury news here from Dr. Tom. Chris, I will try to get, for those of you who are watching this live and not listening to the podcast, I'll try to get a little bit better of a display here for the good doctor, but this is what you got right now.
Hey guys, this is Tom Chris, Doctor of Physical Therapy from the Fantasy Injury Team, here to give you your Week 6 injury preview. It is Thursday night. I am recording this about halfway through the third quarter of the Thursday night game. So obviously some things may change by the time you're hearing this. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Fantasy Injury T for updates and analysis as things continue to progress throughout the week. So let's get started. We got a number of running backs dealing with toe/foot injuries. We'll start with James Cook, who's been reported as both a foot and a toe injury. 2 DNPs to start the week. This does not bode well for him. These types of injuries, the foot and the turf toe, When they're mild, not a problem. Guys can play really well through them. But when they're moderate or more severe injuries, it's really going to zap their explosiveness, their acceleration, their cutting, things like that. So with 2 DNPs, it tells us he's not even close to 100%. Even if Cook plays, I would expect him to not meet his average that he's been putting up this season. Josh Downs, wide receiver, 2 DNPs with a toe injury as well. Pretty much the same analysis, and he has been injured earlier this year as well. He hasn't been as reliable as we were hoping so far, so I wouldn't even consider starting him if he plays this week. Rashad White, who was limited in practice on Wednesday, but didn't practice today on Thursday. That's not good. That tells us he's not likely to be at 100% if he plays. I would expect more Bucky Irving, even if White does play. Again, this will likely zap some of his explosiveness. Ramondre Stevenson also dealing with a foot injury, 2 DNPs. That's not good. He's not close to 100% with that. Again, even if he plays, expect more Antonio Gibson. Zach Moss, initially reported as a high ankle sprain. Now they're saying a foot injury. A lot of times the mechanism for a high ankle sprain, a medial ankle sprain, and a midfoot injury, the mechanism is very, very similar most of the time. Moss was a DNP Wednesday, limited practice today on Thursday. So he appears to be further along than Cook, White, and Ramondre, and he may actually play this week, but he's not going to be at 100%. Again, this types of injuries can zap your explosiveness. He'll probably yield some more touches to Chase Brown, who's actually dealing with his own quad injury. He was limited in practice on Thursday. This doesn't sound like it's going to be that big of a deal. And even though the quad is a critical muscle for sprinting, accelerating, etc., running backs actually see no drop off in their fantasy points when they return from this injury. So Chase Brown may actually be a nice play this week. Jonathan Taylor still dealing with that high ankle sprain. He's had several on this foot in his career. We know 2 DNPs to start the week, despite him reporting he's feeling much better. That, again, this tells us that he's really just not that close to 100%. So even if he plays, I would expect a dip in his snaps, which would likely lead to a dip in his fantasy production, and more Trey Sermon, most likely, who was actually dealing with a collarbone injury earlier this week, but he was a full practice today, so that's not a concern at all. Alvin Kamara did not practice Wednesday, limited today on Thursday with a hip and a hand injury. He initially injured his hip in week 3, and he went on to score 21.4 fantasy points in week 4. I'm not really concerned about this. He logged 89% of snaps last week. So it's more likely just something that's still kind of there from week 3, but we've already seen him play great through this. Hand injuries, unless it's a fracture to where he has to wear a cast, which would obviously impact his catching, and there's no reports that that's the case. Hand injuries really don't impact running backs too much. Some quarterbacks here. Josh Allen, that was interesting. Sure looked like a concussion. Apparently it wasn't. Ankle and chest injuries. I haven't seen any reports of this impacting him so far this week, so he should be fine. Quarterbacks do historically see about a 14% dip in their fantasy points when they return from an ankle injury, but that's not enough to stop you from starting Josh Allen this week. And similarly, Aaron Rodgers, limited practice with ankle injury, should play. That same 14% dip is expected, but really hasn't been that great anyway this season, so I don't know that we're really starting him anyway. Anthony Richardson, full practices as he returns from that oblique and that hip injury. This could absolutely impact his throw power if he would have played last week, but the fact that he's practicing in full this week makes me think that he's really not that affected by this anymore. He should be able to throw and run just fine. Some hamstrings here. Nico Collins is on the IR, which tells us he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. This really hints at it being at least a grade 2 injury. This is likely a re-injury from his week 3 injury. So while he's going to miss 4 games, he can absolutely return to his 100% dominance that he was looking like earlier this season, probably by around week 11-ish. But of course, we'll see how he progresses through rehab. Receivers do average about a 12% dip in fantasy points when they return, but that's not that significant for someone who's scoring as many points as Collins. Similarly, A.J. Brown, full practice. He should return this week after missing the last several games with that hamstring injury. He's had just about a month now to rehab. He should be pretty darn close to 100%, if not at 100%. And since he's had so much time, that's going to reduce his re-injury risk. But of course, that risk is still present. Evan Engram, who's also been out for a while with the hamstring, he's been limited in practice. This may very well come down to being a game time decision again, but tight ends actually see no drop off in their fantasy production when they return from a hamstring. And with the current tight end landscape, I would not hesitate to start him if he does play. Derek Carr will miss a few weeks with an oblique injury. The oblique is a critical muscle for throwing, for creating that torso rotation to throw the ball. He's not going to be placed on the IR, but we know he's going to miss a few weeks. So we're probably looking at like a 2 to 3 week absence there. And we'll reevaluate things as he gets closer to returning. Will Levis has been a full practice with that AC joint injury. He should play. This is his throwing shoulder, so obviously it could impact his power and accuracy. And quarterbacks see a 32% dip in fantasy points in that first game after they return. A couple guys with concussions. Malik Neighbors still hasn't practiced. I would not expect him to play this week. Devontae Smith is a full participant in practice. He will play. This won't affect his stat line at all. Devin Singletary missed last week with a groin injury. He's been limited in practice this week. He should be able to play at a high level when he returns. Running backs see no drop off on average. And Michael Pittman will be out for a few weeks. He's an IR candidate with a back injury. They haven't told us exactly what the injury is. But typically, muscle strains you don't miss this much time for. It's more the disc injuries and the fractures that fits this timeline. I don't know that. I'm just kind of putting timelines together here. So we'll see what happens there. But we know he's going to be out for a few weeks.
Of course, I'm talking with my mute button on here. Sorry for those of you who missed what I said there. But that was Dr. Tom Christ of Fantasy Injury Team. Make sure to check him out over there on Twitter. For the question in the chat, real quick, to George. Who was that? I missed it. But the question was Tolbert against Detroit or Brian Thomas Jr. against the Bears in London. I go with Brian Thomas Jr. Been very, very good on the field. And also advantage Jags in London. So give me Brian Thomas Jr. Just a couple of things to note here quick. One random thing, obviously from last night, if you were watching the game, you saw Isaac Guerendo rip off a 76-yard run. And if Christian McCaffrey comes back and Jordan Mason gets healthy, then he's not going to be relevant. But we did see Jordan Mason just go out. There's not like a ton of bad news around the fact that like he may be out for an extended period of time. I don't think that it's going to be too long. But if he is out for very long, then I do think that Guerendo, who went, again, 10 for 99, that's pretty good, could potentially be a guy that we should be adding early next week. So just monitor that. Don't forget about your guys from the Thursday game by the time we get through Sunday. If Mason is back healthy, I don't expect him not to start. But at least this would open up a seam or a crease for Mason or for Guerendo. And yes, Neighbors also was declared out earlier today, so he will not be playing. And Brian Robinson was also not seen a little while ago at Washington's practice. That could make Austin Eckler maybe an option this week, but they do play Baltimore, so a little bit scary, but maybe worth a shot. We'll have to see how things shape up coming out of there. Ben Standig will be a guy that I'll be keeping my eye on to see what his reporting will be. According to Rob Demboski, only two Packers players who are DNPs are Luke Musgrave, of course, and Devontae Wyatt. Tucker Kraft was a go after being added to the injury report yesterday with a groin. So if you need a tight end, maybe Tucker Kraft is your guy. James Cook and Khalil Shakir remain out of practice. And for the Buffalo Bills, probably out tomorrow, or out on Sunday. But, tomorrow obviously will be a big day. So watch out for that. That per Mike Garafolo. Ben Baby of ESPN, the Bengals running back Chase Brown and Zach Moss are good to go for Sunday's game against the Giants. Coach Zach Taylor said Brown's quad injury was very minor. Taylor not even sure what occurred yesterday. Okay. Speaking of Taylors, unfortunately, Coach Shane Steichen says Jonathan Taylor is also out again this week. He did acknowledge Michael Pittman's injury, but he is not ruled out and says he's one of the toughest guys. So that is a little crazy to me. I kind of expected Michael Pittman to be out. I recommended to the guys in our Discord to go and to go pick up A.D. Mitchell. With Richardson playing, Pittman now potentially, it seems, playing. I'm not sure I'm excited about starting any of those guys. Downs also, as we mentioned, was injured on the week, but he's not ruled out either. So you got a bunch of injured guys, and Anthony Richardson himself coming off injury, who was not entirely that great when he was passing the ball. I don't know. That might just be a whole heck of a lot of ick. So Jalen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course, logged a full practice. He was on the upswing trajectory. He'll be questionable, but the team is optimistic. And Mike Tomlin also says that Russell Wilson will be active probably on Sunday and serve as the number 2. So, yeah, that is all very, very, very interesting. Make sure to follow us on Twitter for those bits of information as they come throughout the rest of today and tomorrow. Adrian, obviously, to answer your Shakir Odunze or Slayton, since Neighbors is out, I think I'm going Odunze. I'll just take the talent there. And Shakir, did I just say that? Did I just say Shakir's out? If I did, well, now you've heard it twice. Okay, let's move on really quick to a thing and a segment that I know all of you love so much, and that is the soapbox. As you know, last week, if you were listening or watching, I did not get to say mine because Matt took up all the time. What a selfish guy. He takes up all the time on the soapbox, and then he goes down to the Bahamas. What's up with that? I don't know. Send him a DM or something like that. Let's go ahead and get right into it. I've got until the music is done or whenever I want to quit to get off my soapbox. Defensive quarterbacks. I don't like it. Why am I not saying this at the draft? I don't know. Maybe I did. Why didn't I say it after? Why did I take so long? Well, I don't know. I just kind of found it a little bit annoying. If we look at things here, Drake Maye, he's starting, so that's why it's relevant. You got Spencer Rattler now too. We could maybe include him on this. But Drake Maye for the Patriots has a defensive head coach. Jaden Daniels in Washington has a defensive head coach. Caleb Williams in Chicago has a defensive head coach. Michael Penix has a defensive head coach down in Atlanta. And that guy last week just said that stats are for losers. Quote, stats are for losers when talking about Kyle Pitts' lack of targets. Bo Nix is the only guy, at least highly drafted, who has an offensive head coach. Why do I think this matters? Well, I'm not saying that if you have an offensive head coach, it means you will have success, but I will tell you this. I think it ruins the potential and opens you up to stupid decisions being made when leaving your young QB in the hands of an inexperienced offensive coordinator. If you look at every offensive coordinator that is hired to be a rookie's OC, they were either failed somewhere else or are totally unproven. Whereas if you grab a head coach who was previously an offensive coordinator, it's a promotion, and if they succeed, hey, guess what? They stick around. Wait until Drew Petzing leaves Arizona, or Ben Johnson leaves Detroit, or Bobby Slowick leaves Houston. I'm not saying that will definitely cause the situation to absolutely crumble, but when you pair hiring a guy who, if they work out, is gone in a year, or 2 maybe, with the possibility of it being a total flop, you have less of a chance at a good long-term outcome, and I just don't like it. I hate it. Why am I bringing this up now, not at the draft, like I said? I don't know. It was on my mind, so that's what we got this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my soapbox this week. I did have to get that off my chest. It's been bothering me for like 3 weeks. Thank you all to everyone who is sticking around. Make sure to check out our website at 32beatwriters.com. Follow us, as I said, on Twitter at 32beatwriters. Make sure if you go to the website and sign up for our pro membership to use the code podcast for 50% off of your first month. For all the 32 Beat Writers staff, I am Zach Hyduk, and we will see you guys next time.